Hello. Um, I just felt like sharing some things, some thoughts, and some feelings and stuff. And it's not necessarily one of those chat GPT convos. These are like more like reflections. And I know that sometimes I'm on here yelling, and well, I could be yelling a lot louder than what I do. And I curse, especially at the people who voted for Trump and stuff like that. And and it's pretty strongly felt. And I have some unorthodox views. You know, I'm one of those people that blame old people for the condition of the world. And this is coming from a boomer. Technically, I'm a boomer. I was born in '63, a couple months before uh, JFK was assassinated. And I I don't think that I know exactly everything that what happened, you know. And there's a couple of things to look at, like when you're born into this world, you don't know what's going on. And as you grow up in your immediate surroundings, you still don't know what the hell's going on. It's like my parents were talking about how they remember when he was assassinated and how it was announced. They talked about where they were, and and I must have been in my mom's arms, you know, and she was getting the news and or relaying it. And the reason I bring that up is because, like for myself, I feel like I've been traumatized. Like when I was younger, I think stuff happened to me that I just have I buried into my subconscious. And I to be honest with you, I met up with a woman who says that she's empath, and she said that you were molested when you were a kid, like very young. And I couldn't accept it. Like I was like I went along with it, but I'm like, well, who the hell would that be? And I mean, I was a cute little wee mite, unlike what I am now. The mug that is before you now, you know, did not look anything like what I did when I was that young. The only thing similar was my curly hair, but then it was blonde. So I don't know what I don't want to get into like that, but maybe if that was the case, then that's everything. Like so, and I would not have brought that up if this woman had not said anything. I would just said that yeah, I just felt like I was born in an interesting time, but who wasn't? There were people born in concentration camps. I mean, who am I to complain or compare myself to that? So that's the only reason why I brought that up. But I'm not going to get all dismissive and wishy washy on you. Okay, I'm going to try to be succinct and to the point. Um, like I think that it's impossible to separate your own personal experience from what you're experiencing. And it's also impossible to separate your past from your present. Um, I I'm not schooled in psychology or anything. I just read books here and there, and I talk to people, and I just try to reflect on my own experiences and you know go over the material and compare with others. What else can I do? And like I never married. I've been out with you know people and stuff. I've done what a lot of us do, like when we're going to college and all that. And I need not bring that up or explore that. And looking back then and what's going on now, I just feel like awful, like petty and ashamed. Like so. One of the things that as I've matured, I mean, I'm 62 now. I realize that like what I am, it has a lot to do with what's around me, what's surrounding me, and there's no way to separate the two. And I look at videos, I read books, I even tried meditating and other things, and reflection and that, spoken to counselors and that, and then not that long ago, I was just watching a video of like the evolution of of a whale. They're originally land animals, and they took to the ocean, and they became these, you know, sea creatures. And then I was like, where's the sense of self in any of that? And then I thought about our evolution because I took anthropology when I was younger, when I was in college. And I think that for the first time, without really like telling Mrs. Plug, my professor, I think that it was really working on me because before that, I was into art and I still am. And I was into like metaphysical stuff. And I think all of that stuff might be ways of avoiding, you know, and it premieres as like the, main feature, but in reality, it's not. The main feature is not even you. It isn't. It's what you're experiencing. That's the main feature of this movie, and you're the star. And so we all are here experiencing stuff. And I've come to name that narratives. And it's like it's hard to accept the idea that, well, like the whale and us, we've evolved. And so how does the sense of self, fit into that? Especially when I got religious and I thought that, I can be saved and God had a plan for me. And it's like, what part of me starts and stops there? I mean, if I evolved from something else, and it's like there's like this continuation of life that's cut up in segments, and it's like digitizing life before it was even digitized, you know, and and then it becomes like so many just like you know individual frames or pixels or however you want to put it that together make up you. And what are we like? So like without time, we wouldn't exist. And again, like as I ramble on about philosophical things like that, existential things like that, probably I'm avoiding something. And I think that you know um I bet I went through some traumatic things when I was a kid, but the trauma that I'm experiencing is it has something to do with what some poor mite is experiencing in Gaza. You know, I mean, I see that stuff over there. I just can't live with it. And there's a lot of other examples, but that seems like the most prevalent one. And yet, I don't know what it is to be in their shoes in Palestine. I don't know. I don't even know what it is to be in my shoes. And so going back and forth, I'm thinking that, yeah, okay, looking at me, I think that something like hit me when I was young, and I've been odd or different ever since. And and I've thought about it. Like I remember when I was like I don't know, I was like 9. I was riding my first bike. I was probably 9 or 10 or maybe even 11, and I was riding my bike. I don't know. I sometimes change the story. I was either going to school. This is probably when I was. I'm going to change it for another, time or another incident. But with this one, I think I was like, I would go home for lunch and I'd walk back to school because my school is like I could hop the fence in my backyard and just scurry onto elementary school. And I think that when I was walking, I didn't hop the fences. I was walking around, just walking to school after lunch. Let's say that's what it was, you know. And I heard a siren. I know that there was a siren involved. I heard a siren off in the distance, and it just like hit me like that. I know now that that's like the universal sound of like trauma. like somebody's going through some kind of traumatic experience. And I've already seen a couple of episodes of One Adam 12. It's called Adam 12, One Adam 12, One Adam. It's called Adam 12. And there was like a scene where this mother her hand was stuck in um, the sink, the garbage disposal. That's all I remember. So you have like the sirens and they show up and you know they save the day. So I mean, I probably have seen stuff like that from TV. So you plug that with what's going on at large. But in my immediate family, I think there was traumatic things that went on that might not have involved the ambulance, but just like domestic violence. And I think me being a sensitive artist type, I think that it really scarred me. And so this woman to say that I was molested, that's pretty hardcore shit. And there's no evidence of that. And I can't even imagine who would even do that to me that's related to me. And here I am talking about it. Well, and I feel like, maybe that just kind of sheds light about my demeanor, you know, and sometimes I don't hold back and, I don't know if it wasn't for like what was going on with like what's going on in the world, maybe I'd find something else to gripe about. I don't know. I don't know. I think that like a few years ago I was like chasing what I thought was like my life, like what I'm gonna do. And my immediate circle, like, falling in love with people and well, I want to be with her or and or I want to work on my art and kind of like not wanting to know what's going to happen in the future, lest I be disappointed. Like, if I had a chance to look at a crystal ball, I wouldn't want to look into that, and even palm reading would disturb me. It's like, I don't know if I want to see if I have a short life or not, the lifeline. So and so I think that looking back, I just like living like in ignorance. The only thing I was sure about, if it wasn't for like loving someone or what have you, I just knew that I was supposed to do art. Because the thing about the love part, it's like I'm not with that person anymore. I don't even have any kids or anything. And and then it seems like as far as I can see, it doesn't even seem like kids really connect with their parents like they're like they would do with certain friends that they make. And I know this because I'm kind of a bookish person. And like C.S. Lewis married and Tolkien married, but they don't talk about that. They talk about in the Inklings how they were such close friends, and they really just wrap themselves around each other's ideas and thoughts, and they would even have arguments. Like Tolkien would rip into C.S. Lewis because he said that you can't have like Father Christmas in your myth making stories of Narnia, and then have like a Greek mythological creature like a Puck, Tumnus, that was the character's name. And then you have like this lion that's supposed to be a representation of like Jesus. And it's like, and you're creating this fantasy world where Tolkien was more specific about his fantasy world. I mean, it was literally a real freaking world with languages and different people and things, and even like the beginning of how it was created, like with Iluvatar and the gods and that. And like they would really get down at it. And I remember reading that when I was a teenager. That's the kind of example of who I was. I feel like I was always escaping. So I'm reading about these people in fantasy, and then later about like science. I read the book Cosmos by Carl Sagan, and throughout all of that, when I was growing up, I was always doing art. And I've been known as the kid that can entertain himself. I just look at stuff and I just create and draw. You know, start listening to music and drawn into myself. Um, and there was some abuse going on in the family, like with siblings and stuff, and how they would fight with their dad, and I was in the middle of it. It's the whole thing was this like looking back. I think it happens with everybody, and like I think that in a sick, twisted way, um, pain could be good. And the reason why I say that is because, like the Buddha says, life is suffering, and like sword sharpens sword, as the saying goes, and all that old time wisdom was attractive to me when I was a teenager. I only read it in the pages of a book that I got from the library or something. But I'd read bits and pieces, or like no commentary on it because I was too lazy to read the entire book. But lately, when I first got my first year in college, I started reading a lot. I read thick books. I read books by Homer. I read books by Schopenhauer. I read books by Nietzsche. I read books by like Milton, John Milton, and Dante. I read all these things, like the classics. I never read anything by Dostoevsky. I don't know why, and I think I should. I think I have to. And this is a tricky thing. Like, so you live your life in your immediate neighborhood, in your immediate surroundings. In your school, in your familial nucleus, your family nucleus, and that. And you're not reading any of these people. You don't know what Dostoevsky was going through, what he thought, let alone Dante. I read Dante and Milton. Homer was fucking blind, and so was Milton. And I was a visual artist since like day one, and so like I took that into account. And like the idea is that you're reading a book of fiction, you want to know about the person who wrote it, and then if you want to understand the book of fiction, you should understand what who the person is, and what they went through, their time in history. And so it turns out that I'm like an academic. I don't like you know I didn't like life outside of school. Like especially college. I was into college. I had my friends outside of school, but by the time I was in grad school, I didn't want to get out. So I think that all of these things that I'm talking about is just forms of escape, distracting myself from something that's going on inside of me. And although I think a little bit like pain could be good, if it's unresolved, if it's unexamined, it can metastasize into something almost tumorous. And I remember I came across that when I was in grad school. Like, could your emotions create like cancer or sickness? And we didn't have the internet then. I just thought about it. Like, and I did that a lot, and I still do this, but now it's kind of harder to separate the genuine uh receiving it from like what might be something that is imponderable, to just like something from fucking social media. And since we're flooded with that, and the airwaves, who knows if we're not picking up stuff like antenna, like radio antenna, and it somehow is retransmitted in our brain, and we think that we came up with it. Who knows? But like I remember like I was talking about that siren sound, and I was walking to school. I never even. I'm glad I caught that. So I heard that. I heard that siren, and then I thought, this pain in the world, like so that to me it was a symbol of pain. I thought that wow, somehow I'm responsible for it. Like so, all the pain that's going on, in the world is somehow because of me. And that's been like really bothering me. And I think that a few years later, I read a book by Herman Hesse, Siddhartha, and I think somewhere that's in there. Like there's a connection between you and the world, and like and I know that Buddhism says that all life is suffering, and I don't know, and so it gets into this thing where you know and then I remember like getting into like Jefferson Airplane and like smoking grass and that, listening to Grace Slick sing "You're Only as Pretty as You Feel," and I was like, wait a minute, and then that brought my attention to what I was experiencing when I was really young. Going to my elementary school, and the siren. I thought that somehow all this suffering in the world is something to do with me. And looking back at all that, I wonder it's because it triggers something that happened to me when I was a kid. And so my interpretation of the world is one of suffering because something happened to me. And then did the same thing happen to the Buddha and all these people that follow Buddhism? And so what happened was I started getting into like, Buddhism and Zen. in my under school years, and I was like calling, um, like what do you call them, like Zen farms, and I freaked. One person heard this, and it freaked them out, and we're all like smoking grass at that time. I was listening to Moody Blues and a bunch of other, stuff like hippy dippy stuff, seven, 15 years after the fact, but like, and it dawned on me that like, I was always interested in stuff that was made before me, but stuff that was made in my time, I just wasn't interested in. Like I'm reading Nietzsche when I was as a 20-year-old, it's like that guy's been dead for how long, and and I'm thinking about how the Russians, like I learned a little bit because I went to college, so you learn about how Russia kind of helped us in World War II, and then something happened between us and Russia, and so they're gonna have to look at the bad guy, and yeah, you learn about what they did to Ukraine. There was a famine there, and it's so it's like, and then like with not and like, and then I would think about my dad. I did this painting of a green colored tornado, and he had like this big, like this mouth with bloody gums, and he was a tornado. And then there was like this virgin, like caressing it, and I had done that like after I heard my dad coughing like really bad in his bed, and he didn't die until like you know decades later of cancer, but I really think that that tornado was him. Now the virgin, I don't know. I'm a Virgo. Maybe somehow I associate myself with the female persona because of the sign of the Virgo is a virgin. And I don't know. And I was still a virgin then, by the way. I don't know. I don't know. It's just some weird thing that I remember. But like, my dad was very he was incapable or unable to just like talk the way I am talking. Couldn't do it. It was always like the way he would talk. It sounded like a gun, like da 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 da, just like a gun. And they were just like commands, like do this, do that. And I mean, he spoke two languages, Italian and English. I can only speak English, but he spoke broken English, and it was really broken. And so this like reception of this, it's like broken, 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 break, break, and breaker, breaker, you know. It's like, can you hear me? And I guess I want this segment to be about trauma and unresolved ones at that. I don't think that I'm going to be able to resolve what happened to me when I was really young, and I didn't want to get into it. Um, Maybe I will get more into the details of it later, like in another video. But I don't know. I think that it's almost narcissistic to think that we are living in a special time because, like, I just have a It's weird because I'm gonna admit it. Like, and I've heard this, I've read about it, I've done things to understand it. This is the only time that exists. Everything else is an illusion. And then I'm like, I hear that, I know what that is about, and I can say, yeah, I understand it. But then I remember when I was a kid and I was in Italy, and I remember us being in the Colosseum, and I remember like there are cats living in the cages, the remains of what were the cages that the lions used to live in during the time of, you know, ancient Rome. And it's like, well, what the fuck is that? Those people lived, and that was their time. Now it's our time. So who's to say that our time is any more important than their time? And so that's the kind of thought that I was getting. And then instead of like, okay, this is the only time that exists, I was thinking, well, what if this is the only time that I can experience? Doesn't mean that there's not other periods of time that are going on simultaneously, like in the void or something like that, you know. And and then I even like I would theorize this stuff. Like, and I was working at this art store, and I used to talk to the assistant manager, Elaine Asado. And I think that we should have probably gotten married. It just never happened. Like, she was the only woman who seemed to. She was the only woman that seemed to get me. She would like to talk with me, and I told her I had this thing about experience. Like I think that we're living in the immediate past. We don't know what it is to live in the present. And then if we were to, and I explained it to her like you was trying to use physics. I read some books on physics, but I really suck at math. And the idea is about the speed of light. And so if our nerves are experiencing things like, I don't know how fast we experience things from if you were to hit my toe with a hammer, how long does it take for it to get to my brain to say, ah, you know, is it the speed of light? And so I don't know. But I was like, we didn't have the internet. I can look it up now, but I don't want to. I was like, hey, if light travels at 386,000 miles per second, I memorized all that shit because I was interested in it. The sun, the distance of the sun from here to us, I remember what it is. It's like 8 minutes away if you do the math. So that sun is what it looks like 8 minutes ago. Stuff like that. So I was like, back to my, you know, motto of being hit by a hammer with my foot on my foot, and it hits my brain. I was saying like, so if that's the case with everything, even me talking to you, isn't that the immediate past? And she was like the only one who was like, oh. And so I thought, what if we were able to get to the future? The present, the true present. So that thing about how this is the present is the only time that exists, everything else is an illusion. And I'm like, we don't even live in the present. So that's how I was contending with that. And then I went as far as thinking if we actually were to meet the present, maybe we would actually be able to see into the future as well as the past, because the past, present, and future is just one of the same. But I think that there is a paradox because as long as we're stuck in these bodies that exist in time, there's no way we're going to be able to experience that because you can only live in local time, which is what Einstein said, moving in one direction. So this is the kind of stuff that I would go into, and probably because I'm trying to escape some kind of trauma that I experienced when I was really young. And I guarantee you that's what it is. But I don't know what it is. All right. I'm not going to go there, but I don't know, but something. And then I was looking at like my dad. He must have experienced some trauma too when he was a kid because he just fucking couldn't communicate. Like he sounded like a fucking gun. He seemed always angry, always upset. And well, lo and behold, some people would say that about me. I scared my students in art class. I taught for over 20 years, but one time I just kind of freaked them out, and you know, they told on me. It's like because I was telling them, the relationship between you and this school, it's all about this. It's all about money. The moment that you graduate, they don't want you here. Boy, I got in trouble. And you know, um, I think that like, and there's like stuff on Facebook and that saying like if you were, grew up in this time and there's these kids riding these bikes and they have these bikes have those banana seats, and the streamers and the handlebars. And if you're one of these kids where you would go out during the day with your friends and you wouldn't come back until like the curfew was like when the streetlights went on, and no one was there to like uh, tell you what to do. Your parents were just waiting for you to come back for dinner. You lived in a very adventurous time, and like I think that I just got done watching a Seinfeld episode the other day, and he was like in the store where they had like these. It was probably this antique shop. No, it wasn't even an antique shop. No, it wasn't an antique shop because this was like before the internet, and they were looking at. And there's a let's just say this is a fucking store. I don't know exactly. I don't know the details. Devil in details. Devil in details. A bike that Elaine saw. It looked like a little girl bike, and so she wanted it. But I remember, well, it was kind of like a trip. it was kind of like a type of an antique store, like let's call it a thrift shop, because Seinfeld went in there. Jerry said, "Wow, look at these toys." Oh, I remember the time when toys could kill you. That was the joke. The Larry David probably penned that kind of joke. And Elaine wants the bike, and she's trying to grab the bike, and she falls, with the bike on her, and Jerry's not. He's flirting with some girl who wears the same freaking dress, and they wind up breaking up because of it, because he wants to see her wear a different dress. And he was in her apartment, he was spying on her, looking around her closet trying to see if there was different dresses. That Anyways, now I just run off on a tangent here, but the point is, like, I was one of those kids that grew up in that time. And um but compared to somebody who was, like, living in the 1600s, I mean, I have no fucking clue. But for me, I don't know how, like, my friends were thinking, but I was thinking, like, in the library, like, we're kids, like those people are still alive. Like, I read in the history books. That stuff. Someone else is like, like this, and just thinking about me, 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 and I'm like, no, but what the fuck is that? And so I remember when Alex Haley's Roots came out. It was on primetime TV. And I guess, because I'm really impressionable, probably because I'm an artist or whatever. But I remember just, like, being sucked into the TV when I was watching how these people were treated like slaves, like Kunta Kinte and all that. And it's just like, it made me so fucking mad that I should have probably got into politics or something. I just stuck with my art. But I read, but I never really. I think I had a type of learning disability. I was kind of. I think I'm slightly autistic, and so, and when you go to school, your public school, and it's all about one size fits all, and they're really not teaching how to think. They're teaching how to obey. But it's not their fault, because they don't know better. But the thing is, that's good. They are exposing you things that people have discovered who are a lot smarter than you. I mean, you take chemistry class, you're playing around Bunsen burners, and test tubes, and you're doing all sorts of weird experiments. And it's mapped after the stuff that people have discovered before us, and the things that they made discoverable is what helped us build the society in which we live today. And it's the same with everything. And I kind of got that, although I wasn't good at math. Although I did pass, I got out of school, but I was like, I couldn't understand economics. I didn't like economics, but uh, I don't know. Like, I think that's something. I mean, there was times, like I remember watching a program. The school tried, though. Like, they sat us down, and they showed us a story about this guy named, I think his name was Larry, and he was a disabled person, and so he was born with a disability, but the movie made it look like the parents didn't, people didn't know, like, oh, he's the dreaded word, the R word, you know, um, that ends with a D. It's a very hurtful word. Um, like, I work with disabled people. We say they have special needs, and there's clinical names for it, like myopia, personality disorder, autistic. These are the better words to use instead of the dreaded R word that ends with a D. And so I'm not gonna even go there, but but this program, like, the music was really touching, and yeah, but I should play on the piano, but I suck at the piano. Anyways, it was he had emotional problems, like he would lose his temper, and there was a woman who was always trying to help him, and she was like his, I don't want to say case manager. I don't think he did a crime. I can't remember. It's been so long, but he just couldn't cope because he had a disability, and so a mental one. He had two arms, two legs, two legs. He can run and walk or whatever. But so let's just say he was autistic, and it was all about this whole thing was about how to get him to adjust into the real world, even to get a job and to get an apartment. And like I know like things have changed to where there's housing for people, and I've been to some of the assisted living houses, and it's because of what I would work doing for work. But I don't know how long that's been there. But and then eventually he disappears on her. I mean, I don't know. I think that she had to find him, but he wound up living on his own. He moved into an apartment, and it was just like everyone's watching it. And then I was looking at the screen. It was like a movie screen in the class. And I look at everybody watching it, and I look at like, and I don't know. I just totally identified with that character, and I think it was a true story. And then you get whisked into your immediate like world, and you're picking on the kid next to you, and you're making stupid noises, and I used to make pig noises and stuff. But I was drawing then. I was always drawing. But it's like, and so I think that like our teachers, with the education system, it was like, okay, we're trying to like communicate something, to these young ones. But I never think they figured out how to like put it all together. It was all like everything was compartmental. Okay, this is about somebody with a disability. Now you're gonna learn about history. Now you're gonna learn about math. You're gonna learn about geography. It's just like, and so there was no like let's pull together and let's really talk about what really is fucking going on. Not to disrespect anything that happened in the past. Like, it's fascinating to know how these individual people will discover things like the nature of a gas, which people we can appreciate it. It's like, my best friend was like, I'll never use this math in the everyday world. And so, but since I stayed in school and I wound up becoming a professor, I was teaching, I taught, I got a math, I was the only one of my friends who got a master's degree. And so I figured it out that the idea was that our schools probably were trying to show that more people should have access to the knowledge that individual people in a given society in a given time period, they might have been prosecuted for what they were doing. I expect because I was into art, so I learned that. Like, but maybe in science too. Like they figured out the nature of these chemicals, or they figured out like what is behind the skin of a cadaver, so that they can make more believable paintings, like your Renaissance artists or whatever. And so it's like the more people know about electronics, science, and art and literature, we're just a smarter society. Like we because only people then, like you have everybody, they're all like bumpkins. Well, I take that back. You have tradespeople. I mean, okay, I take that back. Like you have people who are really good at farming, people good at milling. Like, okay, I'm a that's why you get your names like Miller, you know, and because probably they were literally millers, and so, but like and I remember us listening to um, classical music during a like music period, and Peter and the Wolf. And I remember just being captivated by it. It's like it's good that they expose us to this. So yeah, you have young minds. You're supposed to expose us to culture. I think that's great. But somehow it was hard to link it all together and and put it in the context of what's happening right now. And I think that that was probably reserved for the smarter kids in your social studies class, and also when you go to college. Maybe that was it. Maybe I was, not a part of that clique. But I don't think that clique existed because, I was an oddball kid, and it was like if something was going on, they'd want to tell me about it. And because I was drawing, I was making stuff, and that no one else was doing what I was doing, and I was definitely an oddball. So, but I don't think that existed like this social studies where we're actually telling you about the world. And then I guess I'm talking something political, but like teachers were picketing, before every school year, like I would look in my backyard and I would see these teachers picketing every year. So like, but we were never told why. And like, I was I got in trouble for telling students the problems I was experiencing, you know, being a teacher, and but I got in trouble for it. And you ever notice, like, and so I worked many jobs, and like one of the things, especially like the more like office jobs, like because I was teaching and all that, you don't discuss your paycheck with your fellow employee. I think that has to be eliminated. There's like that trauma of having to compete and having to just take your share that somebody decides what you're worth type of share. But I don't want to get into economics, money. But like so, all of this stuff uh, about living and about like doing what society puts on you to do, it just seems to pale in an experience of like what really is ticking inside of us. It's like this segment I want to be about trauma, and that there's probably different types of trauma that we pick up on and that we even directly experience that we just bury. And I think I kind of want to end it with like, because I could go on. It's like 41 minutes so far. Like my whole because of looking at myself and how I've made X number of videos recently, and I really rip into Trump and people who support him, and for good reason, you know. And I was thinking, wait a minute, maybe he was traumatized in some way. I don't think his parents loved him. I think his parents fucking despised him. I think he had another son. I think he was an airplane pilot. He was a pilot. It, I don't know how their family's relationship with it was that guy, but with Trump, like Donald, what with the Donald, I think that I hear stuff in social media. As much as I want to believe in it, some of it you can't believe. But like his teacher was saying that he's an idiot, and his mom says he was an idiot. I'd probably hope to think that that was true because look at what he's doing. If it was anybody else, I'd be like, well, maybe some of that's like, exaggerated. It's exaggerating, but what he's saying and doing, it's like it's probably real. And I don't. It's like, and so there's a good chance that if he was thrown into the projects or in a low income part of town, and his upbringing had nothing to do with any kind of silver spoon, would he have been? Would he have made the presidency? Would he be anything? And so that goes into like what you know equity is all about, as opposed to equality. And he hates that. He fucking hates that shit. A lot of people voted for him, hate that whole thing about equity. So you have like that picture of the wall, and there's a sports event happening across the wall. And then you have like somebody who's really short, and they have to be put on boxes so they can see the sports game. And next to the person who doesn't need all those boxes, he probably just needs a chair or something like that. So you have like this kind of a thing to equalize people's opportunities to the sports game. And I think that's what equity would be described as or illustrated as. And for someone like me, I've always felt that since I was a kid. I just took it for granted. But as I grew older, it was and the words like equity and DEI. No, I'm not saying that I was familiar with all those terms, but in terms of just treatment, and it just never occurred to me that no, that kid with the boxes, let's kick those boxes underneath that kid because he didn't earn it. Guy's a fucking midget, man. Give him those boxes. Um, so like dwarf. I'm a dwarf, not a midget. Don't confuse the two. So it's just I don't know. Like I think that a lot of it has to do with buried trauma, and so looking at like the Donald, he's probably going through such trauma that it is unbearable, and he's lashing out at the whole fucking world. And I think that somewhere down the line, he must have done unmentionables with people underage or what have you. And he's in the Epstein files, and there's a lot of dark shit there. And that's something else, like the human nature, how we what we really are. It doesn't suffice it to say we're just like we're animals, which we are. There's something more sinister, and I haven't gotten to the core or the the source of that, especially with guys. Like there's something there. And I remember like when I was a little older, I got into Charles Bukowski, and there was a movie, and he was and it was about him. And there's a scene where like a couple of things. He couldn't write like in a cubicle, he just lost it. Then he goes out. Now he's living out. He's like homeless or living on some beach. He meets a woman, and they get it on, and he's drunk or he's drugged up or intoxicated or whatever, and he starts crying, and what he tries to do is go back into her womb, and for some reason it just made so much sense for me, and that's why I was like, I'm an artist, this is what it's all about. Like that scene with Bukowski, like that was brilliant. Like so that scene with him doing that, I really because it's a man doing that, not a woman. And so there's something there, and I have a feeling that guys have not really they don't understand what makes them tick, and especially with this whole like you know um, kind of bro kind of like um, like how guys are supposed to like behave, ultra you know assertive men that are voting for Trump and that are masculine, and they want that traditional. It's like when they say "Make America Great," that's like they want to put women on a leash, kind of a thing. It's kind of like that bro mentality that always rubbed me the wrong way. And not to say that I'm not without any unresolved issues as a man, but I'm just and that's something that like as I got into anthropology, I realized that chances are it could be a lot more fundamental than we think. Because if you were to look at Aboriginal societies, you're gonna have vagrants, you're gonna have like some people that are behaving wrong, but it, it, it can't be as bad as what we have in our modern societies, going back into the even the 1800s, comparison to a society that's been living like they did like 20,000 years ago. Here we are changing every year we change. Something happened to us in Europe, and they eventually went to the Americas. We just totally changed, and same with China. We totally changed, and but then there's people living at the same time like they might have been living 20,000 years before, and so that immediately puts them closer to their natural environment. It immediately makes them more like connected to the natural environment, the natural world, where there is trouble, there is death, there's disease, rotten teeth, the pain, all that. But there's probably stuff that they have figured out that we have not, or that we've forgotten about. And I would probably say that um, a lot of the pain and suffering that we are going through as a society has something to do with how we've divorced ourselves from our natural environment. And so it's ironic because those people probably don't know about like what science knows. But at the same time, what good is that, to them if they're living? Because what are we doing on this world, in this world? Are we supposed to know all these things about splitting the atom and the nature of the material universe? If it's not just for extracting something from it, I would think that it's because I want to find God or something super, something spiritual, because that's the core of my being. But it's like it's probably something we can't even understand if you want to, go there, because like the fact we're made of the same stuff that is smashing in CERN, isn't that enough to know that we are the same stuff as everything else? Everything else is made of the same stuff, which are atoms. But how does that serve you? How does that help you behave in a society? And how does that help you treat yourself? It just seems like we're always after something. And like me too, I'm always after something. And I think the biggest distraction now is you have to survive in an artificial jungle, where before you have to survive in the natural jungle. And with people living in more of an egalitarian lifestyle, it's like you got to work all the fucking time. I mean, have you seen like National Geographic footage or other kinds of footage of people living like they might have lived like 20,000 years ago? They're always smiling and they're always like sitting around, or they're like, doing some kind of ceremony with music and dance, or getting married. And yeah, he's like they're doing this, they're you know what I mean? Like, whatever. Ever see? It's always like some woman's doing that, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? And there's like a pig running around free, kid chasing it, or just whatever, or forget, or not even paying attention to it. And then wherever, whether if this is Indonesia or Australia or parts of Africa, I don't know where. Africa is totally fucked up. And I would think that it's because of the Muslims, and also because of the British, the West, and the Muslims. The Muslims, you go to these nature religious societies, these nature cult societies have been living like that for 20 or 40,000 years. And then you go in there with your fucking monotheism, you fuck them up. And then you have like the industrial societies like England going in there, British going in there, you fucked them up. So Africa got fucked because of those two things. Because don't tell me those people were like idiots. And they probably also got fucked by before the industrial age because of, well, yeah, it kind of ties in with British. They go in there, the Dutchmen, and then they started, making them into slaves. And it's not like they're all completely innocent, because I think that some of the first people over there were blacks selling their own blacks to Europe. But there is a different change, different cultures, culture clash or culture shock, whatever. The different types of people, man, they're totally different. And you're gonna have, crime in any scenario, but not as big as what you have it now with the modern societies. And you would be able to take care of the local, um, rabble, or whatever, and probably made ashamed. They probably made him ashamed, where he's ashamed of himself throughout the whole community. The community makes him realize the mistake that he or she did, and that's how you somehow deal with that. I don't know anything more about it, but like, but all these different societies, all the footage that I would have seen, or I did see, they're always like either smiling, or they're doing this, or there's like some wild animals running around, like pigs and domesticated animals, like pigs running around by them, or dogs, a dog, and the kids. Sometimes the kids are fondling skulls of their ancestors. They go to the graveyard, they can just play there, and it's like, and it's always like a sunny day, and it's like after all of this time on this planet and living in the modern age, I think that those people are more human than us. I think a lot of the type of melodramatic stuff that Europeans go through and also Americans go through, minus what trauma you go through. I don't, but that trauma was probably foisted on whoever did that to you because of our society. This becomes an anthropological problem. And going back to Trump, that guy is so fucking traumatized. Look at his face. Like back when I was saying, when I was in undergrad, when I was in grad school, I was thinking that could our emotions and our feelings change how we feel, and I mean change how we experience our. I no, can our emotions and our feelings physically change our, you know, biology to where it's like, wow, now I got some kind of a tumor, you know. So if that's the case, that guy, you know, there's a word of physiognomy, you know, that guy looks so fucking ugly, so fucking rancid. And now, and I wonder, like, I had this idea before that when you're in the middle of your life, like you have a way to kind of like stave off or fend off what's really inside of you, what you're really about. But as you get older, that that fades, and so the truth does hatches forth, and the true nature comes out because your defenses are gone, and it shows up on your face. It shows up on your face and also in your actions. And then so now Exhibit A, namely Trump, and I mention him because he's a fucking president. You know, if it was like the vice president, I probably wouldn't even care, or if he was like the mayor of my Arizona or governor. No, this guy's the fucking president. And the stuff that he's taking the world through, not just the United States, not just you or me, but the whole fucking world, it's like I was talking to a woman at this coffee shop, and she came off as like a kind of like a new age type of individual and a healer. She called herself a healer. And she was saying somehow Trump was like a revealer. And so I was like, no, he's just a deviant swine. Fuck him, you know. But like she had a point, and I what I mean is he doesn't even know what he's doing. But so he's doing something, and that brings up, you know, all the stuff that's now in our face, and he brings these things to light, and he's just like a tornado. He's just and so he does stuff and people responds, and then you have people that just seem to harmonize with it, like you take a guitar string and you strum it, and then other guitars with that you know will pick up on the same vibration, and that their strings will vibrate like this, you know, instrument is, you know, they resonate with him. And I can't get into all these different people's heads, these Trump supporters who support him. Trump is like traumatized. There's something going on with him. But and then it's like, well, was he molested? You know, I don't know. I don't know anything. Think about that. If he's molesting girl, they call him a pedophile. Don't pedophiles, you know? And I wasn't even close to that. I just, you know, I always liked women that are my age or older. I just I had students make passes at me, and I just like, you know, I tried dating one, but I was like, we cut it off within like a week and a half. I was like, nah, it just doesn't seem, it just didn't feel right to me. It's just, and so but with him, I mean, the way he talks about girls younger than him, it's just something weird. And so looking at, it's like it's easy to look at and hate him for his policies and that, but I think that if we could look at things like, so in a previous video, I was talking about how these wars were going on, the two wars, the one with Ukraine and Russia, and the one with the United States and Israel and Iran. We're fighting Israel's war. Instead of looking at who's right and who's wrong, just look at what the stuff is, you know, uh, you know, and like, okay, like, and this objective is what, to end the fucking war. But like with Trump and things like that and stuff, looking instead of like he's right or he's wrong, just look at what he is doing. And then I mean there's gotta be people who are like, you know, like smarter than me who are like specialists, who are like psychologists and that like and just to say that he's a narcissist, is that enough? Is anybody saying that he something happened when he was a kid, he was traumatized? And I'm sorry, and yeah, I hate the guy. I hate his wife. I hate him. I hate his kids. I hate everything about Trump. I hate JD Vance. I hate RFK Jr. I hate all those fucking people. I can't stand them. And then if you're voting for them, I can't stand you. It's like, get the fuck out of here, you know? There's like billions of people. I'd rather just be around them, you know, and I'm trying to figure that shit out. Like, you know, there's all these fucking people out there, and you're only around like a two or three people that are like, we need to have stop the immigrants from coming in. Why am I fucking around with you? I should be with these people over there who I've never even fucking met, you know? And like really, I mean, people don't care about you. Even your family, they care about themselves. Because they're animals. We're all fucking animals, and animals are only especially a family. You're only concerned about your family, and that's just how you're wired, you know. And if you don't have one, you're like, you're alone for Christmas, you know. And it's like, but anyways, it's like, I want to look at like what's happening as opposed to who's right and who's wrong. And in doing that, I can't help but think that then it kind of, it kind of like spreads out. And it's the whole fucking world, or let's not go too far. It's the environment, and it's our milieu that creates people like Trump. It's our system, how what it has become. And so that's why, my whole life I was always inward. Now I'm like outward. And like, so I tend to get political and all that. But to me, it's all a part of being inward because we are our environment, are we not? I know if you like snap your fingers and made your environment disappear, my theory is you would disappear. And so until we understand that, I think we can't fix these problems. And I don't know how far it's an hour. I think I'm going to end it here. But I think that like our commander in chief, I think Donald Trump is very traumatized, and it would be weird if like everyone started hugging him until after the 100th person hugging him. What would he start crying? What would the goal would be to get this fucker to cry? And the only reason why I say this because that's what happened to Nixon. And so there was that movie. I think Oliver Stone made it. God, I might watch it tonight, man. Kind of late, but like, Nixon is crying, and he's asking Henry Kissinger to get on his knees, and pray with him. And he cried. He says, I don't know, I was just trying to do what I thought I had to do. And he was like, it turned out to be all this mess. And I think that when you look now, and this is the thing, now I'm getting political, when you look at Nixon, he was a very complicated man, and he was very intelligent, and he was able to reflect on himself. He was a Quaker and all that stuff, and he broke down. I wonder. Chances are that was really true, you know. And the scary thing is, Trump has never gotten to that point. He's still clinging on to power. And I wonder how we could learn from that. Like, what are we doing in our lives that we're just clinging on to that we need to let go of? Oh, she should pay attention to me, or he should pay attention to me. Um, and I go there because I think that it's like when you are not being reciprocated by somebody that you want to be reciprocated by, you might expand that out into the world, and you unleash on the world. But he's had all sorts of tail. So I don't know what his fucking problem is, unless he was like not loved by his parents. So then he got to go back to Freud, because Freud was all about the relationship between the sibling and the parent, the relationship between the child and the parents, right? That's what Freud was all about, right? And sex. He's all about sex, But like the thing about the parent, like you have the Oedipus kind of, the Oedipus, kind of a thing, and stuff like that. But yeah, relationship between child and parent, and all these things are buried in unresolved trauma, which is what would create a psychotic episode, because the trauma is not, you know, you don't know what it is, so you have to, go to the specialist, and they try to fix you up, and they try to bring that out in you, like what happened, oh wow, you were actually, what happened to you, and what's your really connection between you and your parents, and that's what Freud was all about. And I think with Trump, I think it's a really Freudian problem. What he is doing is what he is doing because it's a real Freudian problem. And just a point apart from getting all existential and saying, no, we all have this problem, everything is this consciousness and trying to realize itself. And so there's that bridge between us and that the Hindu material is great. But for this, with Trump, it's very Freudian. And his neurosis, he passes on to the world. He's like flinging it into the sky, and we have to fucking deal with it, And it's almost like, Napoleon. If we found that Napoleon's real problem was he had a small prick, and he was just like short of stature, and that's why he was the way he was. Hey, Napoleon, And it's more complicated than that. But like with Trump, it's almost something like that. And maybe not those things, except for the small member. There's something very Freudian going wrong with that guy that is totally unresolved. And like at least with Nixon, and I think Oliver Stone, he kind of showed how his mother was a stern, very strong religious mother, and with the religious, upbringing of the Quaker tradition, and the father was like a store owner and also very religious and very, very, very sharp with his children. And so there was no commun. It was kind of like me and my dad. There's no like real communication. He was incapable of it. He was not shown how to do that. And that's probably my trauma, is that we couldn't communicate. And I don't know, like, so again, all these things reflect on ourselves, so the best we can do is look at ourselves and see what is unresolved in us. But the problem with that is, but what about the environment, the world, with this guy in charge? And it affects your everyday life to where you have to survive. And then that's why I get like into the whole thing about, communism versus capitalism, socialism versus, communism versus fascism, capitalism versus socialism, and all these, it's all connected somehow. But with Trump, I think that this guy, to end this, he's very traumatized. He's a traumatized individual who's in charge of the strongest country and the most powerful country in the world. And he set this, he's like the tuning fork of that neurotic type of mindset. Because it's all about our experiences. You want somebody else to experience what you're experiencing. We all want that, whether it's something good or bad. So he wants us, like with me, I'm talking to my friends saying, we have to get together and watch the Triplets of Belleville. That's freaking great animation, we gotta fucking watch that. Or I'll be like, hey, we have to watch, Stanley Kubrick's Lolita. That's just a great work of art. And it's a little bit different from the book. And there's another version of it, but with Peter Sellers, and like Claire Quilty or whatever. It's like that's why you want to I want to get together with my best friend. Let's just watch it. Like I want you. It's like I tell people, you got to watch that fucking movie. You got to watch that movie by Stanley Kubrick. And I'll be saying that about music. Like you gotta watch these. There's like this mini series that was aired in France about the life of Beethoven. It's like, oh, you gotta watch it. I mean, it's because I got some feeling from it, and I want you to have the same feeling. And I told this to more than one person. You got to watch that. That's like me wishing that experience on you. And then I make this art, and I want you to experience what I'm making. I want you to experience it like we're both together experiencing this thing. Because what's more sad than you being alone all the time and no one can experience what you're experiencing? That's pretty fucking sad. So look at Trump. He has all the stuff that he has in the world, But I think he's, if you look at him, he is fucking miserable, folks, in a very, very, very destructive way. And so his self destruction is externalized and it's pushed onto us. And I don't think he can help it. And so he wants you, because like I said, we all want somebody to we want to share the experience. Um, I remember when I started listening to Warren Zevon, I was forcing on my brother-in-law, like, you gotta listen to this, you know. Oh, you gotta listen to this song by Warren Zevon. Come on, we're out in the backyard. We gotta listen to it. The whole album. Oh, I don't want to listen to the whole album. You gotta listen to the whole album, you know. And for some reason, I got off on things like Transverse City. You know, it's like listen to that. That's really like pretty wild, you know. And so lawyers, guns, and money. You know, something about him. He just when I first got into him, it was like, bah! You know, I would hug this guy. I did two paintings of him. I did two paintings of him. And so, but with Trump, what does he want you to experience? He talks about make America great and all that. Now, I'm not talking about what you're saying. I'm talking about what you want to do. Like I want you to do things with me. He he's not a he what he is doing what is not what he's saying. What he's doing is invading countries, destroying economies. Like in Cuba. Can you imagine you're living your life in Cuba, you were born and raised there, and you don't have electricity because of this other country that you're we're close enough, and um, because of the president, because of a person, because that's what they want. Yeah, that's what he really wants these people to feel. He wants them to feel this pain and this trauma. And now he's traumatizing Iran. And then you look at Netanyahu, and every time I look at his face, I just want to puke. I just can't stand the guy. And it makes me fucking mad to high heaven that why is that guy, he has so much, but he's just destroying everything with it around him. He's destroying like the Palestinian state around him, and it's all for the sake of Israel. And he must live in this weird blanket of love, this cloak of love that's really, it's inversion of hate. It's just really just fucked up. I think Trump is not much different. And they just want to cause pain and trauma because that's what they're feeling. And they want you to feel what they're feeling. And I'm feeling it. And I myself have been traumatized, like I said. And I found balms. I found a balm in like art, music, and culture. And I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm going to continue anymore. I think I'm going to stop here. And that's it for now.